Good afternoon. Welcome to Beholden To Truth. It is your humble host, Joshua, here for another happy hour session. Coming at you in the mobile office, sitting outside the gym, getting caffeinated with our pre-workout. You guys know the drill. Very glad to be with you today. I got some interesting topics on my mind, really interesting stuff. I was kind of thinking like what I wanted to talk about today, and I just shared a reel on Instagram like 2 minutes ago, and that just kind of overrid my backlog of there's like 50 different topics on my phone that I could just pick up and do a vlog about on any given day. But this one was actually sent to me by a follower who's obviously a white advocate Christian man on the same path that we are on, trying to defend Christendom and trying to defend our civilizations that we built that are unique and deserve to be protected, as do the people who built them. And this is always the tension in our work. It's always, well, how can you be a Christian but say that you prefer white people in terms of who you surround yourself with and the cultures they build and so on and so forth, which is so selectively applied. It's very obnoxious. It's very intentional. When you look at black people or Hispanics or whoever else, and they obviously prefer their own too. They all self-segregate. Nobody thinks Mexico should become an African country. Nobody thinks Nigeria should become a European country. And nobody would say, well, those Nigerian Christians living there, if they were being overrun with Europeans and Arabs and Hispanics, they wouldn't have the right to raise their hand and say, yeah, I don't like this. This is our land. We built it. So I'm sorry, it's not a Christian thing. It's our land. Nobody else should be coming here and thinking that they can become the majority and assume leadership over us and all of that. It's only applied to white nations. I've explained this a million times, and you know why that is. It's to destroy Western civilization, because Western civilization is the bulwark against communism. Western civilization also has a historical pattern of being the strongest opponent of Judaism. It's the Roman Empire. Who destroyed the temple? Who was it that said, the way these Jews see the world, the way they see people who aren't themselves, it's actually extremely dangerous, and we don't want this proliferating, so we're going to shut it down. And ever since then, we've had a problem, haven't we? Haven't we? And so that never ended, right? This is the reason they got kicked out of dozens of different European countries. This is the reason why they go after Christ and they don't really care that much about Hinduism, Buddhism, paganism. This is what it is. It's always been this way. They hate Jesus Christ. They always have. It's in their doctrine. It's in their religious doctrine that they think Jesus is burning in hell. And so the tension with this platform and everybody who is white and Christian are always met with this asinine rebuttal of, well, you're Christian. You're not allowed to say that you prefer white people, and you're not allowed to say that any given country should be majority white, because that contradicts the quote about there is neither Greek nor Jew nor Gentile. And then they never quote the rest of that verse where it also says there is neither man nor woman. Oh, wait. Pretty interesting. So you're saying the concept of gender roles is just nullified because of Christianity? No, the Bible clearly installs and mandates gender roles. And so therefore the concept of Greeks and Jews and Gentiles, the concept of nations of people is not discarded by that quote. I've talked through many different ways to dismantle that argument, but this one in particular was a new perspective on it. It's from the book of Acts, but I'll put it up on the screen. And it talks about how, if you're familiar with the story of the Tower of Babel, God dispersed all the different people into different lands of their own so that they wouldn't try to come together and essentially achieve or attempt to achieve godly status amongst men. And so he disperses all the nations of the world and gives them their own unique slice of land, and he makes them speak different languages. And he does this intentionally. But in that verse, it specifically says two things. It says he gives them all different appointed times, and he gives them all different boundaries. And so this creates a very interesting conversation, because you just had God explicitly saying boundaries are what he wants. which is the complete opposite of globalism, which is the opposite of liberalism, progressivism, that says boundaries are just this man-made concept where people who have xenophobia and the fear of, or an irrational fear of other people, go and draw these boundaries just because they don't like other people who don't look like them or sound like them or whatever. We didn't do that. God created the boundaries, and he didn't draw the boundaries arbitrarily. He drew them around the unique people groups. Why do you think that is? And when it says that, you know, each of these different people groups are going to be given different appointed times, we aren't to say, humans aren't to say, well, this period of time was for the Egyptians, this period of time was for the Ottomans, this period of time was for the Ming Dynasty, and this period of time was for the British Empire, French Empire, this period of time is for America. Humans don't get to decide when an era of power or influence begins and ends. We're all just participants. It's God who decides when a time begins or ends, and to what degree. But what is clearly laid out is that God separated the people, and he drew boundaries around the separation of the people based on their peoplehood. In other words, to distill that into one word, that is God saying he mandated homogeneity. He said this is what's best for humans, is to live amongst people like themselves. It's cut and dry. And so this is just one more rhetorical piece of ammunition in your white Christian tool belt to say that everything we call for does not contradict the Christian faith. It is fully aligned with it. It is, and this is New Testament, by the way. You can go plenty of times and cite the Old Testament, where God tells his people, at the time, the Israelites, that they are not to intermix and assimilate with other people. I mean, it is explicit. It is a sin in the Old Testament. And when they do, every single time, it leads to social collapse, apostasy, all kinds of hedonism. Wow, it's almost like that's exactly what happens. When America was 90% white, it was also 90% Christian. And then when you say, well, let's invite in 20% Hispanics and 5% Arabs and 13% Africans, and who else wants to come? Anybody doesn't matter. Some East Asians, some East Indians, fine, just throw them in the mix. Oh, wow, you wake up 60 years later and America is 50% Christian. Who could have seen that coming? I know who saw that coming. The Jews. The Jews understand that diversity is not a strength for others. Diversity is a strength in terms of camouflage. For themselves, it offers them protection because they don't stand out as the other, because they have always been the other. This is the arc of time in terms of how Jews relate to all the different nations they have ever been in. They have always been seen as the other, especially obviously talking about post-exile. As they have lived in the diaspora, they have always been seen by sheer numbers also as the small fractional minority of their host nation. And their languages they speak, the holidays they celebrate, their religion, all of their cultural practices stand out like a sore thumb compared to their host nation. And they get self-conscious about that, especially when a lot of the things in their religion and in their culture are deemed immoral or illegal to their host nations. That makes them stand out even more. And so wherever they go, this is why you see Jews advocate for open borders, encourage immigration, encourage multiculturalism, encourage religious ambivalence. This is their playbook. It has been the playbook for thousands of years. And that's why I just laid it out for you. It's good for them because it protects them. It obfuscates and confuses the people as to why are we suffering? What's going on here? Why are people falling away from the faith? Why is the social fabric changing around us? Is it the Africans causing this? Is it the Arabs? Is it the Hispanics? Is it the Jews? I don't know. There's too many different variables. Only the people who are well studied and devote literally hundreds, if not thousands of hours into figuring out, pulling back the string, the ball of yarn, the peel of the onion, to mix metaphors, it's only those people who actually start digging and say, okay, just rewind time. Who was it that said diversity and multiculturalism is so valuable and important? Go back 100 years, you find the Jew who wrote The Melting Pot, the play, that we all use that term now thinking that it's just like obvious and true that America is a melting pot. A Jew wrote a play called The Melting Pot, and his entire premise of the play was, this is sneaky, guys, he's complimenting how much he loves America. And so it's hard not to take that as a pro-America stance. And the reason he is so pro-America is because he's saying, in his own words, when I came to America, I was not forced to assimilate. I didn't have to give up my religion that contradicts the religion of the land. I didn't have to change my cultural opinions and feelings. They didn't fight back against that. And they just melted me into the society. And that's what's so enjoyable about America for people who are foreigners, for people who have an alien religion. The fact that they can come here and not have to change, suddenly that became the norm. That was authored by a Jew. That was a psychological operation to normalize and popularize in the media and to redefine America as a melting pot. And the very same people go on and author the Hart-Celler Act in 1965, where previously we had codified laws on the books in terms of our immigration policy that said we will only accept a certain list of European countries in terms of immigrants, not even all European countries. But obviously underlying that is only white people. We have no desire to bring in Hispanics into this country, or Arabs, East Indians, Asians, none of it. We want white people here because it's a country for white people. Well, thankfully, the Jews went and said, you know what, maybe it wouldn't be a big deal if we got rid of those pesky laws that make sure only whites are coming into the country. And maybe, it'd help on the global stage. This is the backdrop of the Hart-Celler Act. It was proposed that it would not have a meaningful impact on the demographic of the country. At the time, 90% white. It was proposed in the post-Cold War era to help America's reputation on the global stage, to make us appear very friendly and warm to all the other nations of the world, that, yeah, sure, anybody can come here. It's no big deal. We're not racist people. Because keep in mind, only 2 decades before that, race became a very substantial issue as globally cried about by a certain particular group of people in the aftermath of World War II. And so race became this social issue worldwide. And so the Jews who go on to bastardize the immigration policy of the United States of America in the 1960s say, well, if you want to repair the racial perception of America, you don't want to be like one of those racist countries like Germany. And so maybe you just get rid of those old pesky laws about immigration. It's not going to be a big deal. Look, we'll invite in 5,000 here, 10,000 there. It's not going to be a big deal. Okay, 60 years later, you have in the Joe Biden presidency 10 million non-white people coming into the country in 4 years. And over the course of the 60 years since the Hart-Celler Immigration Act, you have something like 150 million non-white people coming into the country. Wow. Thank you, Mr. Melting Pot. Thank you, Mr. Hart-Celler guy. I can't remember his first name. It's 2 individuals, Hart and Celler, and I think Celler was the Jew who helped author that. All of that, keep in mind, that's happening simultaneous to the Civil Rights Act and getting rid of segregation, also supported and politically promoted by Jews supporting Martin Luther King, writing his speeches for him. Very obnoxious stuff. But look, this is actually not why I turned on the camera today. Well, the first part about that verse in Acts, where God clearly says the different people need borders around them to keep them homogeneous. Homogeneity is declared by God as what he wants, because he knows that diversity leads to inevitable conflict. It's part biological, it's part cultural. And cultural has a lot of stuff within it. There are the language aspects, there are the different religious affiliations, and there are, most importantly, the different views of history. Every people group comes with a history. They don't just let that go when they move to another country. Did the Jews let go of the Holocaust when they came to America? Nope, they sure didn't. They still have a huge problem with white identity. They still have a huge problem with nationalism. They still have a huge problem with anybody criticizing their religion. Have the black people just moved on from slavery? Of course not. Have the Hispanics just moved on from the evil white colonizers genociding and doing whatever they did in the 1600s to take over this land? Have Arab people let go of what the British Empire and Israel have done all throughout the Middle East over the last 80 years? No, as I said, these grievances never go away. God understands this. God understands the nature of war and cultural conflict, clash of civilizations, that these things leave scars that do not heal. At a group level, yes, you will have some individuals who move on, and in some circumstances, reparations can be made. But for the most part, where the civilizations are especially different, it doesn't change. And so that verse in Acts, I thought, was an important one to share with you guys, because that makes it non-negotiable. That makes it inarguable that God said we must have boundaries, and those boundaries, they're not drawn arbitrarily. They're not drawn around even faith. They're not even drawn around language. They're drawn around the people, the different people groups, the nations. When the Bible uses the term nations, it's referring to the people. It's not referring to the names of countries. It's referring to nations of people. And so God drew borders around the people because he didn't want them mixing, because he knows that that creates unavoidable conflict. And so we are trying to reinstall God's directive. That's what segregation is. It is a boundary line. It says, you're a different people, you stay over there. Not because we hate you, but because we clearly do not mix well. Which is the exact same thing God dictated both in the Old and New Testament. So, pretty interesting, right? Pretty interesting that we've been lied to our whole life about race and diversity and multiculturalism. And it's only us white people who have been lied to. And it's only us white people who have actually put that into practice. Blacks still self-segregate, talk about their feelings towards whites, distrust whites. All these other groups still have antipathy towards whites, still prefer their own. It's only whites who became hopelessly naive, largely because they were MK Ultra'd with mass propaganda into thinking that it was immoral to prefer their own people and to watch out for their own people. It's so devilish. I mean, it really, really is. This shit is satanic. You see Satan's fingerprints all over this. So that's all I have to say about the racial stuff today.
The number one question you guys are asking me is, how can I wake people up? And you also ask, how can I help support you? And so I have a solution for both of those questions. You can head over to my Substack. You'll be able to get exclusive early access to all of my documentaries, my long format content, free ebooks, and even a chance to talk to me one-on-one. You can do Ask Me Anythings. There's several different membership options for your budget, whatever fits your lifestyle. Head on over and get yourself a subscription now.
There's another topic on my mind that's kind of interesting. I've been reading this book lately that you guys may have heard of by this guy you may have heard of. Who do you think I'm talking about? I think you're probably thinking one thing, and funnily enough, you're probably not wrong, but that's actually not who I'm talking about. I'm reading this other book by a different guy I'm sure you have heard of. let's get it out here. Technological Slavery by our Uncle Teddy, aka Theodore Kaczynski. Some people call him the Unabomber. You know, I have a lot to say about this, because sheerly sharing the information that you're reading the Unabomber's book is enough to send some people into an emotional spiral. It's the same as if you said, I'm reading Mein Kampf by Hitler. They automatically, because of the connotations of the material in the book and the individuals who wrote them, they start coming up with a lot of thoughts that are not positive. The only reason you would read Ted Kaczynski's book is because you somehow sympathize or empathize or agree with the violent attacks he did, the bombings that he did, that you are considering violence, resorting to violence for your political imperatives. That's the only reason somebody would read that book. And it's only taking you down a dark and dangerous path to read that. And all of the same is true if you tell somebody, even more controversial, that, yeah, I'm reading Mein Kampf. Like, go tell Lenormand that, you know, hey, what'd you do this weekend? Yeah, I sat around, read a few chapters of Mein Kampf. Like, I can't even say that without smiling, because you know that that person just got so emotionally uncomfortable. You know that that's what happens. You just do. It would be like saying I sat around reading the what is it? I don't even know what the satanic Bible is called. Shouldn't even use the word Bible when talking about the handbook for Satanists, but whatever it's called, there is one. I can't remember what it's called, but it'd be like saying you sat around and read a few chapters about how to worship Satan. This stuff is obviously intentional as well. All of this emotional sensitivity around these controversial figures who were politically dissident, who, had a problem with Jews, better not read any of their material, even though people like, I don't know, Henry Ford, George Patton, Mel Gibson, Martin Luther, by the way, the guy that we all accredit for Protestantism, that virtually every Christian in America you talk to, by the way, he had a substantial problem with Jews. Did you know that? He wrote an entire book about it. To verbally express that you're reading material by somebody who had a serious problem with Jews, such to the point that he made it part of his political mission. It wasn't his entire political mission, even though that's what they think, to swat down Jewish influence in his nation. You tell somebody you're reading Mein Kampf or the Unabomber's manifesto. The manifesto is actually just part of that book. It's a consolidation of many of his other writings as well. It's funny because I told my dad over the weekend, Memorial Day, that I was, and I knew this was going to happen. It was kind of just like fun seeing what would happen, But I was like, I'm reading this book by Theodore Kaczynski, Technological Slavery. And I could tell he was so uncomfortable. Like, because his thought as a boomer is immediately, what has my son become? My son's going to be on the news for bombing this, sending letter bombs to politicians and corporation owners and so on and so forth. Wait till I tell him that I'm reading Mein Kampf. Oh, man. That's going to be fun. Hilarious. But this is the thing. People have so little critical thinking and are so emotionally sensitive to political dissidents or obviously all the things that Hitler addressed, that they just can't fathom why you would want to understand those individuals. What did Theodore Kaczynski actually care about? What was he trying to warn us about when he, as a last resort, did these violent things? Have you ever actually stopped and read why he had to resort to those tactics? That's not a promotion of those tactics. That's not an agreement with those tactics. I'm asking an honest question. Why did this individual feel like he had to resort to violence? What was he trying to warn us all about? It's the name of the book, by the way, Technological Slavery. Industrial Society and Its Future was the name of his manifesto that he sent to the Washington Post. It's like 100 paragraphs going into elaborate detail, walking you through step by step for the layman to understand, here's what technology is doing to society. And he did this 30 years ago. And where are we now? We are all slaves to technology. And this was far before the internet, well, good internet, social media, 24/7 internet connections, fast, high-speed broadband, all that stuff. Certainly before the proliferance of pornography. He was simply looking at it from the Industrial Revolution and the outgrowth of it and how it was affecting humans and the environment. And he already saw the writing on the wall that this is going to be unquantifiably destructive to humanity. And the system that it creates basically turns people into slaves for it. Rather than technology being a tool for the people to improve our lives, we now exist to serve the technology. We have to adapt and conform around the newer, progressing, ever-progressing technology. But an interesting thing, I'm not that far into the book. I'm like 75 pages out of 100, so 25%. But just in the first 75 pages, he talks about two very interesting subjects. One of them is the power process, which goes into detail about what do humans intrinsically need to feel like they actually have autonomy and influence over their own life, aka the power process. They need to have a goal. They need to be actively doing something that is delivering visible progress against that goal. They need to have some level of autonomy in being able to do that themselves and set their own goals. And they need to ultimately achieve at least some of their goals. If you never achieve any of your goals, if you're not seeing progress, if you don't feel like you are autonomously setting those goals and getting to decide how you go about achieving them, then you feel powerless as a human being. And the problem with the technological world that we all are now enslaved into is that a lot of that power and autonomy is stripped from us. So that's actually not the important part that I want to talk about. But the power process, it also talks about the psychology of the leftist liberal mind as well. And it's very amusing and very spot on. You should absolutely read it. It talks about the conformity of the leftists to all of these social narratives and peer pressure and how they find fulfillment out of conforming to the group versus conforming to human nature and what is true and just. That's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is a third subject where he goes into what he calls surrogate activities. Surrogate activities are any number of priorities in your life that you have set that are beyond your Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Food, water, shelter, emotional support, the very most basic needs of a human life. After those are checked off, all of the other things that you do to fill up your time. And the whole thesis of the manifesto and the book is that in the age of post-industrial revolution, the fundamental problem that humanity faces is all of these technological capabilities have basically checked off all of our most basic needs that used to fulfill us. The majority of your time was spent meeting your basic needs, growing food on the land, taking care of your family, taking care of your home. There wasn't all of this half dozen list of hobbies and activities that I do. There wasn't, I'm going to go travel the world. There wasn't, I'm going to go to concerts. I'm going to go to movies. I'm going to sit down and watch half a dozen hours in a single night of streaming content. All of these various activities that we have brought into our lives as a result of the progress of technology, we do these things trying to fill the cup of fulfillment and happiness. And are we more fulfilled and happy? Technology answered all of these things where you live in the first world. Basically, all you have to do is breathe and show up to whatever entry-level job And thanks to the socialist government especially, you just have to literally keep breathing and obey orders and show up to whatever entry-level job, and your needs of shelter and food and water and healthcare are all checked off. And now you are left with 100 hours a week where you are trying to find something to do with your time because all of your most fundamental needs are already met. And because you're no longer striving, you have to do something else. And all of this leisure and entertainment starts to fill up that time. But the problem is those things are not fulfilling. You can go and watch the IMDb top 100 movies list, and that's not going to fulfill you. Great, you know the name of every actor and director and producer in every film. That's fantastic. You're a film aficionado. So why is it that you still need to continue to consume more and more films to be happy? You go and take up whatever hobby, baseball, basketball, going to the gym like I do, some kind of technological thing, being a photographer, a videographer, basket weaving, whatever it is. No matter how much of it you do, you're never done because you are still continually trying to engage with that activity, become better at it, accomplish higher achievements of it, because you're still chasing happiness and fulfillment through that, what he calls surrogate activity. And we're all guilty of this. All of us. Literally all of us. Think of what you do outside of your time that is not making enough money so that you can eat. It's a hodgepodge of TV shows, video games, movies, pornography, leisurely activities, travel, whatever else. But none of those things are fundamentally essential to human life. And so when you start to break down the hours in any given week and you see the ratio of hours spent doing the most basic necessities of life versus hours spent on entertainment and leisure, the ratio at this point for humanity in the first world is probably 7, 8, 9 to 1. We spend the overwhelming majority of our time with entertainment and leisure. And that was not how historically humans existed. And as a result of this, you have more people depressed, seeking out medication to try to answer why it is they feel so unhappy, seeking out behavioral therapists to try to answer why they're so unhappy, trying to find whatever stream of dopamine they can, whether it's literal drugs or anesthetized through mass entertainment, sports. This season I'm going to watch all of the NFL games and the college football games, and next season I'm going to watch the March Madness and all of the college basketball games, and I'm also going to watch hockey, and I'm also going to watch every sport possible so that I just don't have to think about what actually matters in this world. God's kingdom here on earth, protecting your people, providing for your family. What if all of your time, if not the majority of your time, was devoted to those things rather than filling up almost every hour of your non-work time with all this garbage? Maybe you would be happier. Maybe you'd be more fulfilled if you were actually focused on the necessities. And so this concept of surrogate activities, it was pretty interesting because when I read that in his book, I was like, I've explained this on my channel. When I got into the fitness lifestyle, I talked just in one vlog ago about this, where when you start investing in what actually matters, taking care of your physical health, that has downstream effects on your mental health. It improves your longevity in 100 other ways. You have to elbow out a lot of that leisure that is actually, it turns out, not even making you happier. And in a lot of ways, it's poisoning you, especially when it's psychological propaganda coming from people who hate you, hate your ancestors, hate your God, want you to suffer, want your children to suffer. I found unintentionally, through simply focusing on my physical health, that I had to, as a means of time management, start shoving all of those activities away, all of those surrogate activities. I had to change that ratio of my daily, weekly, monthly life, skewing it far more towards self-investment, securing resources for my family, and improving my physical health, mental health, and spiritual health. And I am an infinitely happier and more fulfilled person. That's the purpose of my platform. So it was pretty cool to see that old Teddy here diagnosed the exact same thing, what he calls surrogate activities. We all just fill our life up with these thinking that they're going to make us happy, and they still don't. It's an unquenchable thirst. You always need more of them, and then you also need something new. You see this with people all the time. They pick up one hobby for 3 months, get tired of it, they pick up a new hobby. Now, there is an important thing to say. I'm not sitting here saying everything Teddy said in his book is right, because guess what I also found out? Just in the first 75 pages. He says that those surrogate activities, he lists many different examples, many of the ones I just went through. He also says religion is a surrogate activity. And if you do a little bit of research on old Teddy, you'll find out that he was an atheist, as were his parents. And so this is where a lack of faith can actually poison constructive, good understandings of the world. Pursuing God, a relationship with Jesus, is not a surrogate activity. It is not a matter of filling up your time with something to distract you. It is actually the source, the only real source, the only lasting source, the only truly organic source, the only eternal solution for fulfillment. And so this is where Teddy went wrong, and obviously this is why he could eventually rationalize turning violent, and ultimately he ended up killing himself. Why? Because he couldn't justify humanity. He couldn't reconcile man's sinful nature, the fact that it's actually always been this way. The industrial age is just a modern iteration of the cancer of sin. Pride, greed, gluttony, and sloth, they're all intermixed in the Industrial Revolution and moving forward into the digital revolution. But Teddy, without a religious foundation, an understanding of sin and how harmful it is, he put all of the blame simply on technology. Technology is just, it's the same as turning a stick into a bow and arrow. It's the same as harnessing fire to stay warm. The industrial, mechanic age, digital age, whatever, that's nothing new under the sun, okay? The fact that people are using it for destructive means, consciously or subconsciously, people picked up sticks and turned them into clubs and raped women and did plenty of other vicious, hostile things with tools for as long as time has existed, okay? It's not technology in and of itself. It is the means for which technology is used. But I mean, there are important caveats to that, where previously, I mean, you could argue that, well, some of those advancements in weaponry and whatnot made fighting easier, and so conflicts lasted in a shorter period of time, and so less time was having to spent in perpetual defense of your civilization, and therefore you start to experience idle time, and that idle time is the devil's playground. So, you know, the problem is, as an overeducated individual, you can start to philosophize and turn this into a matter of sophistry to say that all forms of technology, whether they're mechanic or digital or turning out or finding out you can connect two sticks together to make some kind of thing, you can't fall into that trap of completely deconstructing the concept of technology and seeing it as only inevitably bad. And that's not what Teddy eventually came to, but I'm just pointing out that it is also a religious thing that he lacked. He lacked a respect for all human life, the sanctity of human life, that you have to pursue Christian solutions to sin and threats of humanity. That can be done, but without a religious anchor in his life, things went bad for himself. As I said, he ends up killing himself, and things went bad in terms of how he approached the resolution for awareing people about the threat of technological slavery. And we can debate for endless hours about whether or not he could have got the message out if he didn't resort to those tactics. It is what it is, okay? It's already happened. It's in the history books. But it's just the more important meat of this conversation is the concept of surrogate activities. You should also understand that power process. You should definitely read what he has to say about the leftist pathological mindset. But this one surrogate activity I have a huge problem with, and this is how I'm going to wrap up the vlog, because I got to get into the gym, man. I got to finish this pre-workout. It's not a surrogate activity, okay? Bodybuilding, he calls bodybuilding a surrogate activity, by the way. It's not. Improving your physical health so that you live longer, so that you can be there to watch your children run around having fun on a playground, that's not a surrogate activity. Not dying of diabetes or a heart attack, some kind of cardiovascular failure at 45 years old, that's not a surrogate activity, Teddy.
Our country is at an inflection point. We can all feel it. And now is not the time to be a physically, mentally, or spiritually weak man. I've spent the last 10 years creating a blueprint for unfucking your life up, and it's a lot more than cleaning your room. How to achieve physical, mental, and spiritual mastery gives you a layman's understanding of how to master dieting and exercise, get the most out of your time, build ironclad mental fortitude, and leverage your faith to become a role model among men, something we desperately need right now in this time of war. I break down how to create a sustainable, flexible diet from scratch, how to organize your fitness routine, supplementation, and I dispel many myths and provide many red pills on dieting and exercise. The book is on sale right now at BEHOLDENTOTRUTH.com for 20% off. Or you can get a free copy if you're a founding member of my Substack, which would also include a one-on-one 30-minute session with yours truly where you can ask me anything. Go to BEHOLDENTOTRUTH.com right now to become the man that you were meant to be, and the man that we desperately need you to be.
But anyway, this one surrogate activity that I have a huge problem with is travel. I really think this is a serious problem because it is one of those that did not used to exist. This idea that we're all meant to just see the world, every corner of the world, every continent, every state in the country that we live in, every province, whatever they're calling them in that nation, that's not how humanity worked for thousands of years. And it's partly a problem due to mass media because we didn't used to get to see all of the other cultures around the world, even within our homogenous areas. And so we weren't pulled toward that newness, that I need to experience something new. Oh, it looks different there. There's a different climate there. There's beaches there. There's mountains there. There's forests there. There's fish there. There's different foods there, all that stuff. We weren't pulled towards the reminder that, technically speaking, there are a lot of things that are out there that you could consume, enjoy, witness, experience. Technically, yes, that is true. But you can fall into the trap of that becoming a surrogate activity where if you don't get to experience those things, and you know other people are, these days we call that fear of missing out. These days you hear of so-and-so going on a ski trip. These days you hear of somebody going on a cruise. They're going to visit Europe. They're going to Mexico. They're going to Australia. I'm jealous. Why don't I get to do that? Why don't I get to see all these interesting and unique places? The concept that you even the idea that you even get to see those other places vicariously is creating those problems. It's envy. It's unbound curiosity. It's an unhealthy level of curiosity to believe that where God placed you when you were born is not enough. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't flee dangerous situations, culturally toxic situations, If you're born in Portland, Oregon, my suggestion is you get the fuck out of there. If you're born in New York, LA, Seattle, you should probably get out of there. But the idea that you need, in order to be happy, to go globe-trotting around the world, I need to visit 30, 40, 50 different states in order to feel cultured. I need to see the world. I need to follow some musician while they're on tour. This is absolutely bananas. It's not healthy. It is not healthy. And I see this all the time, especially among women. It's very annoying to me. I've seen this so many times in my dating world over the last 20 years. I just want to travel. If I have kids and get married, I won't be able to travel. What? How? How does traveling the world, or even just the United States, become a higher priority than finding the love of your life, creating a home, having children, serving God? Do you see how sinister it is that thanks to mass media, whether it's social media, mainstream media, Hollywood films, TV series, and so on, the wanderlust that has been created in the modern generation of all people living in the first world, this idea that they can't be fulfilled or happy unless they get to go on a vacation, if not multiple vacations a year, in foreign places, that is so unbelievably toxic. As I said, that's not how humanity achieved fulfillment and happiness, historically speaking. And you shouldn't need that to be happy. Like, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills, because everybody I know loves to travel. All my family, every woman I have ever dated, when are we going on vacation? I'd like to go here. I'd like to go there. And I know I'm probably the fringe minority in this case, but I just don't give a fuck, okay? I really don't. I've been to 10, 20 different states in the United States. I've been to Mexico. I'd like to see some parts of Europe, but they are not priorities. Like, I'm not sitting here booking vacations later this year, into next year, counting down the days, saving up money. If those opportunities come, especially when they're via work, okay, cool, I'll make the best of them. If I get roped into those activities because other people's families live there, I have friends who are getting married in other places, okay, cool, that's fine. But it's not a priority of mine. There are very, very important things that I need to be collecting resources for perpetually. There's very important work that I need to be doing perpetually here at home. I don't need to be blowing thousands of dollars on plane tickets, rental cars, and hotels, and food at restaurants, and concerts. That money is not mine. That money is my future family's. I had to explain this to an ex of mine who is like, I get really depressed if I don't get to go on vacation every 3 fucking months. I'm like, okay, this is a gender problem. First and foremost, you need to acknowledge that the man's responsibility is to provide for the spouse, the children, the home, the medical care, the food, the clothes, literally everything. Okay, so it's my job to make sure we have enough resources and plan for the future that is going to be very costly, seeing as we're not even married yet. We haven't had the kids yet. Did you know even having birth in a hospital costs $10,000 or more? Hello? But it's very important for you that we go spend multiple thousands of dollars to visit Hawaii. And so, as I said, it's a gender issue. Women have been installed this psychological programming of wanderlust that makes them feel unfulfilled and like they're missing out on life if they don't get to do all of these very clearly surrogate activities. A lot of men fall into this too, but it's far more common with women. And the only reason men go along with it is because women hold access to sex, and they will make their lives miserable if they don't comply, which is a power dynamic problem. That is cucked men letting women control the relationship, control the finances, control the time management of the relationship. You as a man need to say, listen, honey, it's just not that fucking important that we go on vacation to Disney World or to Hawaii or Miami or wherever the fuck else you're talking about. It's more important that we save our money to make sure our children can be educated, well-fed, housed in a safe, majority white neighborhood, by the way. We can, if we need to, pay for them to go to a private Christian school or pay for their homeschooling. There are going to have to be financial compromises we make. Traveling the country or the world is not a high priority, especially given how difficult the cost of living is these days. I'm blessed because my career is in the upper middle class. Most of you guys are not there, and you won't be there for another 10 plus years. And so if you're blowing money, or if women are telling you you need to blow money on these surrogate activities in order to meet their threshold of happiness, you need to explain, my responsibility is not to entertain you. My responsibility is to provide for you and for our future children. And you see this with the older demographic who think that the day they retire, that's where they get to go and blow their 401k and their retirement funds on touring the world. They could be reinvesting in their family. They could be helping them, paying off their debts so they're not crushed, helping them buy their first home, setting aside money for their grandchildren. No, I think it's more important that I go and spend $15,000 per vacation, per 2-week vacation, cruising, flying to other countries. This is the selfishness of the boomer demographic that I talked about a couple vlogs ago. It's just on display. What am I supposed to do with all my time now that I'm retired? I have to find happiness and fulfillment somewhere. Why don't I flush down the toilet tens of thousands of dollars to go and spend time in a foreign country? I could be investing in my family. No. Why would I do that? I need to be happy and fulfilled. And so I am going to go on multi-week long cruises and tour countries that are completely irrelevant to me and my progeny and my future. I'm going to ignore the politics and the changing landscape in the country that protected me and gave me the career to afford all this wealth. I'm going to watch it collapse while I sail off into the sunset on my boat. Unfucking real. Unreal, you guys. Is it just me? Is it just me who has a problem with this idea that travel is so ridiculously important? I got work to do. Real work, okay? I'm trying to not let the white race go extinct. I'm trying to not let Christendom collapse. I'm trying to not let my future daughters get raped by gangs of Venezuelans. That's a little more important than going to the concert in the state near you. It's a little more important than going to Disney World. It's a little more important than going and spending 2 weeks in Maui. Get your fucking priorities right, men. Don't let these women tell you that the priorities are in any other order other than provide for the well-being of her. If she's going to become your wife, you should not be blowing money on travel on girlfriends, by the way. Please, listen to me. That money that you have is not yours. That money is your future family's. And it is meant to serve their needs, not your girlfriend who might or might not break up with you this fucking month to make sure she gets her fulfillment checked off with whatever nice hotels and flights and concert tickets and clubs and so on and so forth. Any woman who expects that and says that you are obligated to provide that in order for her to be in a relationship with you, get the fuck out, okay? Not compatible. Anyways, that's gonna wrap it up for you guys. I gotta go because the
Beholden to Truth. Christ culture. identity and fitness lifestyle. Red pilling the masses on the front lines against the synagogue